Captain Jake Morrison stood at the window of the human ship US Harmony and watched the planet below. The world was green and blue, much like Earth, but this was not home. This was Kepler 442b, a neutral world where humans would meet with aliens. For the first time in history, Jake felt his stomach twist with worry. Everything had to go perfectly today. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Parker checked her notes one more time. She had spent 3 years studying every alien species they might meet. Her job was to make sure humans did not make any mistakes. One wrong word could ruin everything. She looked up at Jake and gave him a small smile, but he could see the fear. In her eyes, 2 Commander Sam Rodriguez walked into the room carrying his weapons belt. Jake shook his head. "No weapons, Sam. This is a peaceful meeting." "I don't trust them," Sam said. His face was hard and serious. "We know nothing about these aliens. What if this is a trap?" "It's not a trap," said Ambassador Vera Collins as she entered the room. She was older than the others, with gray hair and kind eyes. She had been Earth's best negotiator for 20 years. If anyone could get humans into the Galactic Confederation, it was her. "The aliens have been peaceful for thousands of years. They want to help us join their group." Jake looked at his team. These 4 people would represent all of humanity today. The pressure was enormous. If they failed, humans would remain alone. In the galaxy, if they succeeded, humans would have friends among the stars and access to alien technology that could change everything. The ship's computer spoke in a calm voice. "Attention.
We are receiving a message from the planet's surface.
The Galactic Confederation Council is ready to meet with the human delegation." Jake took a deep breath. This is it. And remember, we follow Vera's lead. We say nothing unless she tells us to. We bow when she bows. We smile when she smiles. Got it? The others nodded. They had practiced this moment hundreds of times, but now it was real. The transport ship took them down to the planet's surface. The building where they would meet was huge and made of white stone that seemed to glow in the sunlight. As they walked toward the entrance, Jake saw his first real aliens. There were creatures that looked like giant insects with 4 arms. Others appeared to be made of living crystal that sparkled in the light, looked almost human but had blue skin and extra eyes. Jake tried not to stare, but it was hard. After dreaming about this moment his whole life, he was finally meeting beings from other worlds. Inside the building, the ceiling was so high, Jake could barely see the top. Hundreds of aliens sat in chairs arranged in a circle. At the center was a raised platform where the human delegation would stand. The noise was incredible. Some aliens made sounds like singing. Others clicked or buzzed. A few spoke in languages that sounded almost human, but then the room became quiet. A group of tall, elegant aliens entered from the far side. They moved, like dancers flowing across the floor without seeming to walk. Their skin was pale silver, and they had large, dark eyes. When they looked at the humans, Jake felt a chill run down his back. "Those are the Zephyrians," Lisa whispered. "They are the most respected species in the Confederation. They have been in space longer than anyone else." The lead Zephyrian was introduced as Elder Kethvon. He was ancient even by alien standards, and his voice was like music when he spoke through the translation device. "Welcome, humans of Earth. We have waited long to meet you. Your species shows great promise." Ambassador Collins smiled and bowed. "Thank you, Elder Kethvon. We are honored to be here. Humanity hopes to learn from the wisdom of the Confederation and contribute to the peace you have built." The ceremony began with each species presenting their traditional greeting to the humans. The insect-like Thraxians performed a complex dance. The crystal beings sang in harmony. The blue-skinned Norians offered gifts of precious metals. When the Zephyrians' turn came, Elder Kethven stepped forward. He and the other Zephyrians began to make sounds that were unlike anything Jake had ever heard. It was not quite singing and not quite speaking. The tones rose and fell like ocean waves, creating patterns that seemed to touch something deep in Jake's mind. The sound was beautiful and haunting. Jake felt tears come to his eyes without knowing why. Around the room, other aliens listened. With respect and wonder, This was clearly something special. When the Zephyrians finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then all eyes turned to Ambassador Collins. It was the human turn to respond. Collins had studied Zephyrian culture. She knew that responding to their greeting was very important. She had practiced the basic tones that meant friendship and peace. In their language, she took a deep breath and began to make the sounds she had learned. But something went wrong. Elder Kethben's eyes went wide with shock. The other Zephyrians stepped back as if they had been struck. Around the room, aliens began to make sounds of fear and confusion. Collins stopped making the tones and looked around in panic. "What's wrong? What did I do?" Elder Kethven was shaking. His voice was no longer musical, but harsh and cold. "Impossible. How do you know the ritual of ending silence? Do you know the ancient war songs?" "War songs?" Collins looked confused. "I was trying to say friendship in your language." "No," said Elder Kethven. "You have spoken the words that end all words. You have declared war upon the Zephyrian hegemony, using the oldest and most sacred of challenges. There can be no mistake. You know the old ways. You are the death singers we were warned about." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Round. The room aliens were backing away from the human delegation. Some were making sounds of fear. Others seemed angry. "Please," Collins said, "this is a misunderstanding. I don't know any war songs. I was trying to be respectful." Elder Kethven was no longer listening. He spoke to the other Zephyrians in their own language. His voice filled with what sounded like fury and fear. Another alien, one of the crystal beings, spoke up. "Elder Kethven, surely this is a mistake. The humans are a young species. They could not know the ancient rituals." "The ritual of ending silence cannot be spoken by accident," Elder Kethven replied. "It is too complex, too specific. These humans are not what they seem. They're hunters disguised as peaceful children." Sam stepped forward, his hand moving toward where his weapon would have been. "Now, wait just a minute. Nobody here is a hunter. We came in peace." "Peace," Elder Kethven laughed, and the sound was terrible. "You speak of peace while your representative declares eternal war? You mock us with false innocence while showing knowledge of rituals that predate your species' existence? No, you are death singers, and you will be treated as such." The crystal being tried again. "Surely the Confederation can mediate this misunderstanding?" "There is no misunderstanding," Elder Kethven said. "The ritual of ending silence has been spoken. It cannot be taken back. It cannot be ignored. The Zephyrian hegemony and the human species are now at war until one or both cease to exist." The room erupted in chaos. Aliens were shouting in dozens of languages. Some seemed to be arguing with the Zephyrians. Yes. Others were demanding that the humans be removed immediately. Jake grabbed Collins by the arm. "We need to leave now." As they hurried toward the exit, Jake heard fragments of alien speech through the translators. The words chilled him to the bone. "The Zephyrians have never lost a war. They destroyed the Krellin Empire in 6 months. 50,000 years of victories. The humans don't know what they've done." Back on their ship, the 4 humans sat in stunned silence. Finally, Lisa spoke. "How bad is this, really?" Jake looked at the data coming in from their ship's computer. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The news was spreading fast. "Bad," he said quietly. "Very bad. The Zephyrians aren't just another alien species. They're the galaxy's apex predators. They've never been defeated in war. Ever." Collins buried her face in her hands. "I've doomed our entire species." Outside the ship's windows, the stars looked different now. They were no longer points of light representing hope and friendship. They were the eyes of predators, watching and waiting. And somewhere out there, the Zephyrians were preparing for war. The emergency meeting room in the Pentagon was packed with people. President John Carter sat at the head of the table, his face gray with worry. Around him were the most important military leaders, scientists, and advisors in the human government. The news from the Galactic Confederation had reached Earth 6 hours ago. Panic was spreading through every major city on the planet. General Rick Hayes stood at the front of the room with a tablet in his hands. He was a big man with scars. On his face, from old battles, he had fought in 3 wars and had never seen anything that scared him. But today his hands were shaking. "The situation is worse than we thought," he said. "Much worse." Dr. Amy Turner stepped forward. She was a small woman with thick glasses who had spent her life studying alien history. Her voice was quiet, but everyone in the room listened carefully. "I need to tell you about the Zephyrians," she said. "What we know will terrify you." She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a map of the galaxy with different colored sections. "The Zephyrians have been in space for 50,000 years. In that time, they have fought in over 200 wars. They have never lost, not once." The display zoomed in on different parts of the galaxy. Red sections appeared, showing destroyed civilizations. 23 species have been completely wiped out by the Zephyrians. Not defeated, not conquered, completely destroyed. Every man, woman, and child killed. Every planet burned. Every trace of their existence erased. President Carter leaned forward. "Why? What did these species do?" "They existed," Dr. Turner said simply. "The Zephyrians evolved on a death world. Their planet was so dangerous that only the strongest, most violent creatures could survive. They are not like us. They do not understand mercy or forgiveness. To them, any species that shows strength is a threat that must be eliminated." Captain Tony Clark, head of military intelligence, spoke up. "We've been intercepting their communications. They're already mobilizing their battle fleets. Our long-range sensors show movement in 17 different star systems." "How long do we have?" asked the president. 3 months, Clark replied. "Maybe 4 if we're lucky." General Hayes brought up new images on the display. They showed Zephyrian ships, and the sight made several people in the room gasp with horror. The ships were alive. They looked like giant sea creatures crossed with machines. Their hulls pulsed like heartbeats. Tentacles and claws extended from their sides. Even in the pictures, they looked hungry and evil. "These are not normal spacecraft," Hayes explained. "They are living creatures bred for war. They can heal damage during battle. They adapt to whatever weapons we use against them. They grow stronger as they fight." Dr. Turner continued the briefing. "The Zephyrians don't just use technology. They are biotechnology. Their weapons are living creatures. Their armor is grown, not built. Their soldiers are bred specifically for killing." Ajay showed new images of Zephyrian warriors. They were tall and thin, like the diplomats humans had met. But these were different. Their silver skin was covered in natural armor. Their hands ended in claws that could cut through steel. Their eyes glowed with a cold intelligence that promised death. "Each warrior is designed for a specific type of combat," Dr. Turner explained. "Some are bred for space fighting, others for ground assault. Some are living weapons that explode. When they die, they have no fear because they are created without the ability to feel fear." Maria Santos, the communications specialist, raised her hand. "What about the Galactic Confederation? Won't they help us?" Captain Clark shook his head. "They've already expelled us. The vote was unanimous. No species wants to risk Zephyrian anger by helping us. We're completely alone. There's more," Dr. Turner said quietly. "The ritual that Ambassador Collins accidentally performed, it's worse than we thought." The room became completely silent. The ritual of ending silence is not just a declaration of war, it's a promise of extinction. When a species performs this ritual, it means they intend to fight until every member of the enemy species is dead. The Zephyrians believe that any species that knows this ritual is an ancient enemy that has been hiding among the stars, waiting to attack them. President Carter rubbed his temples. "Oh, so they think we're some kind of ancient threat?" "Yes. They think we've been planning this war for thousands of years. They think we're as dangerous as they are." General Hayes stepped forward again. "Something else. Our spy satellites have detected something troubling. The Zephyrians aren't just sending a normal battle fleet, they're sending a species elimination force." "What does that mean?" asked the president. "It means they're not coming to conquer us or make us surrender. They're coming to kill every human being in the galaxy." Every man, woman, and child. Every human colony, every human ship, every human settlement. They want to erase us completely. Room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, President Carter spoke. What are our chances? General Hayes looked at his notes. Honestly, sir, we have no chance at all. Zephyrians have technology that's thousands of years ahead of ours. Their ships outnumber ours by 1,000 to 1. Their warriors are bred for killing, while our soldiers are just regular people. By every measure, we should be extinct in a matter of weeks. Should be? The President asked. Hayes smiled grimly. Yes, sir, should be. But there's something the Zephyrians don't know about us. What's that? Spent 50,000 years fighting civilized species. Species that follow rules of war. Species that surrender when the battle is hopeless. Species that value honor over survival. Hayes walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people were going about their normal lives. Not knowing that death was coming from the stars? We're not civilized, he said. Not really. We've been fighting wars for our entire history. We've committed genocide. We've used biological weapons. We've bombed cities full of innocent people. We've done things that would horrify every other species in the galaxy. Dr. Turner nodded. The Zephyrians have never fought a species like us. They've never faced an enemy that was willing to do absolutely anything to survive. Captain Clark brought up new information on his tablet. I've been studying their battle tactics. They're very effective, but they're also predictable. They always fight the same way, because it always works. They've never had to adapt, because no one has ever given them a real fight. So what do? Asked the President. General Hayes turned back to the room. We do what humans do best. We cheat, we lie, we fight dirty. Use every horrible trick our species has ever learned. Make them regret that they ever heard of Earth. Can we win? Probably not, Hayes admitted. But we can make them pay. Such a terrible price that other species will think twice before threatening humanity again. We can show the galaxy what happens when you try to exterminate the human race. President Carter stood up. Then that's what we'll do. General Hayes, you have full authority to prepare our defenses. Use whatever resources you need. Dr. Turner, I want you to find every weakness the Zephyrians have. Captain Clark, start gathering intelligence on their fleet movements. He looked around the room at the faces of his advisors. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to fight for the survival of our species. The Zephyrians think they're hunting sheep. Let's show them they're hunting wolves. As the meeting ended and people began to file out, Maria Santos approached Dr. Turner. Do you really think we can survive this? Dr. Turner looked at the data on her tablet. Numbers that showed just how hopeless their situation was. Then she looked up at Maria and smiled. The Zephyrians have never lost a war, she said, but they've never fought humans before. We're about to teach them something new. Outside the Pentagon, the sun was setting over Washington, D.C. soon. The sky would be full of stars, and somewhere among those stars, death was coming for humanity. But humanity was preparing to fight back. Admiral Kate Griffin stood on the bridge of the battleship U.S. Washington and watched the most incredible sight in human history. Thousands of ships filled the space around Earth. Military vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining ships, and even private yachts. Every human ship that could fly had been called home to defend their world. But these were not the same ships that had left. Each one now bristled with weapons. Cargo holds had been converted into missile bays. Passenger lounges had become fighter launch bays. Even the smallest civilian craft carried enough firepower to destroy a city. Admiral, said her aide commander. Lisa Stone, the final production reports are in. Kate took the tablet and read the numbers. In just 2 months, humanity had accomplished something that should have been impossible. Every factory on Earth was now making weapons. Every mining operation in the solar system was gathering materials for the war effort. Every human colony had become a fortress. The numbers were staggering. 50,000 new missiles per day. 100 new fighter craft every week. New ships rolling out of orbital shipyards faster than they could be crewed. How are we managing this? Kate asked. Lisa smiled grimly. 18-hour workdays, no vacations, no days off. Every human adult is working in the war effort. Even children are helping in the factories. Kate nodded. She had seen the reports from the colonies. 10-year-old kids learning to operate defense turrets. Elderly people working in ammunition plants until they collapsed from exhaustion. Pregnant women welding armor plating right up until they gave birth. The entire human species had become a weapon. Dr. Ben Walsh approached them with excitement in his eyes. He was the head of weapons development, and he had been working without sleep for weeks. "Admiral, you need to see this," he said. He led them to a viewing window where they could see a new type of ship being tested. It was smaller than a normal human vessel, but covered in strange bumps and spikes. "We call it the Virus," Ben explained. "It's designed specifically to kill Zephyrian bioships." Kate watched as the test ship fired its weapons at a target. Instead of energy beams or missiles, it shot clouds of what looked like dust. "What is that?" she asked. "Modified Earth bacteria," Ben said with a wide grin. "We found out that Zephyrian bioships are basically giant living creatures. So we created bacteria that thinks Zephyrian tissue is food. When it hits their ships, it starts eating them from the inside out." Kate stared at him. "Created a disease that eats alien ships?" "That's not all," Ben continued. "We also have acid bombs that dissolve their armor, poison gas that kills their warriors, and sonic weapons that cause their bioships to have seizures. The Zephyrians have never faced biological warfare before. They won't know how to defend against it." Colonel Lisa Stone, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "What about ground combat? What happens when their warriors land on our planets?" Ben's grin got even wider. "Come with me." He led them to another section of the ship where human soldiers were training. But these were not normal soldiers. They wore thick armor that made them look like robots. Their weapons were larger and more powerful than anything humans had used before. "Enhanced combat armor," Ben explained. "It increases strength by a factor of 10 and provides protection against Zephyrian claws and weapons." But that's not the best part. He pointed to a group of soldiers who were moving differently than the others. They were faster, stronger, and more aggressive. "Genetic modifications," he said quietly. "Volunteer soldiers who agreed to have their DNA altered. Increased muscle mass, improved reflexes, enhanced healing, reduced need for sleep. We've created super soldiers." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. "Is that ethical? Is extinction?" "Ethical," Ben replied. "These volunteers knew the risks. They chose to become weapons to save our species." An alarm sounded throughout the ship. Kate's communications officer rushed over with a message. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from the outer colonies. Zephyrian scout ships have been detected in the Proxima Centauri system." Kate felt her heart rate increase. "How long until the main fleet arrives?" "Intelligence estimates 2 weeks, maybe less." Kate looked out at the thousands of human ships surrounding Earth. In 2 months, they had built the largest military force in human history. But would it be enough? "Send a message to all colonial governors," she ordered. "Begin evacuation of non-essential personnel to fortified positions. All civilian populations are to be moved to underground shelters. Military forces are to prepare for siege warfare." Commander Stone stepped forward. "Admiral, many of the colonies are refusing to evacuate." "What do you mean?" "They say they won't run." The governor of New Texas sent a message saying his people would rather die fighting than live as refugees. Same message from New California, New Australia, and 15 other colonies. Kate closed her eyes. She had expected this. Humans had always been stubborn when cornered. What about the children? Most are being evacuated to Earth or the inner colonies. But some families are choosing to stay together, Kate thought about. Her own daughter, safe in a bunker on Luna. At least some human children would survive. Even if everything else was lost, engineer Mike Chen arrived with a team of technicians. He was covered in grease and looked like he had not slept in days.
"Admiral?"
"The new shipyards are operational. We're now producing 1 capital ship every 3 days. But we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "We don't have enough trained crews. We're putting civilian volunteers on military ships and teaching them to fight as they go." Kate nodded. She had known this would be an issue. You could build ships faster than you could train people to operate them. How are they performing? Mike smiled. Better than expected. Turns out civilian ship crews adapt to military operations pretty quickly when their families' lives depend on it. Another alarm sounded. This time it was different. The ship's computer spoke in an urgent voice. Attention all hands. Long-range sensors have detected the Zephyrian main battle fleet. Estimated arrival at Earth in 10 days. The bridge became quiet. Kate looked around at her crew. These people had worked without rest to prepare for this moment. They had transformed their entire civilization into a war machine. But now, the enemy was coming, and they would find out if it was enough. How many ships? Kate asked. The sensor? Operator checked his readings. Over 5,000, Admiral. All of them larger than our biggest vessels. Kate did the math in her head. The humans had managed to build 3,000 combat-ready ships. The Zephyrians had 5,000 ships, each one more advanced than anything humanity possessed. But Kate smiled anyway. Open a channel to all human forces, she ordered. When the channel was open, she spoke in a calm, clear voice that was broadcast to every human ship, every colony, and every military base in human space. This is Admiral Griffin. The enemy is coming. In 10 days, we will face the greatest threat our species has ever known. They expect to find frightened prey waiting to be slaughtered. Instead, they will find something that has never existed in this galaxy before. They will find a species that refuses to surrender. They will find humans. She paused and looked out at the fleet of human ships. For 2 months, we have prepared for this moment. We have turned our entire civilization into a weapon pointed at their hearts. We have created new technologies, new tactics, and new ways of fighting that they have never seen. We are not the helpless species they think we are. Another pause. Zephyrians have won every war for 50,000 years. Today, that streak ends. Today, they learn what it means to fight humanity. All ships prepare for battle. This is our moment. This is our war. And we will show them why you should never corner a human. The channel closed and Kate looked at her crew. They were smiling now, despite the impossible odds. Outside the ship, the human fleet began to move into formation. Thousands of ships carrying the hopes and rage of an entire species. They were ready for war. Captain Dan Miller watched through the view screen as the first Zephyrian bioship died. The alien vessel writhed in space like a wounded animal, its living hull dissolving as human bacteria ate it from the inside. Black fluid leaked from its wounds, and its tentacles clawed uselessly at empty space before it finally went still. Target destroyed, reported his weapons officer. The viral payload was successful. Dan looked around the bridge of the UES Defiance. Half his crew was already dead from the radiation leaking through their damaged hull. The other half would be dead within hours. But they had done it. Damn. They had killed a Zephyrian ship. Send the data to Fleet Command, Dan ordered. Tell them the bioweapons work. Tell them how to kill these things. Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's scientist, looked up from her medical scanner. Her face was pale from radiation sickness, but she was smiling. Captain, we've learned something important. The Zephyrian ships aren't just alive, they're connected. One dies, the others feel it. What do you mean? Watch the other enemy ships, she said. Dawn looked at the tactical display. The remaining Zephyrian vessels had stopped their attack. They were moving away from the human fleet, grouping together in a defensive formation. They're scared, Dan realized. They've never lost a ship before. They don't know how to handle it. The battle for Proxima Centauri had been raging for 6 hours. Zephyrians had arrived, expecting an easy victory against a primitive species. Instead, they found humans who fought like demons. Human ships attacked. In swarms using tactics no civilized species would consider. They rammed enemy vessels, exploded their own ships to damage the aliens. They used weapons that dissolved, poisoned, and infected rather than simply destroying. Major Alex Thompson crouched in the ruins of New Austin Colony and watched Zephyrian warriors advance through the smoke, their silver skin reflecting the flames from burning buildings. Their claws could cut through steel, and their weapons fired energy that could melt concrete. But Alex was not afraid. He had been fighting these creatures for 3 months, and he had learned their weaknesses. Remember, he whispered into his radio, "They can't see heat signatures through smoke. Use that against them." His soldiers were hidden throughout the ruined city. Some were in buildings. Others were underground in tunnels they had dug during the siege. A few were actually inside the wreckage of destroyed Zephyrian ships. The aliens had superior technology and natural weapons. They fought like hunters stalking prey. They expected their enemies to run or hide, were not prepared for prey. That hunted back. A Zephyrian warrior stepped over a pile of rubble where Alex was hiding. The alien was magnificent and terrifying, standing over 7 feet tall with muscles that rippled under its armored skin. Its eyes glowed with intelligence and cruelty. Alex waited until the creature was directly above him, then struck. His vibro knife, enhanced with human technology, slid between the alien's armor plates. The Zephyrian's scream was like breaking glass, but Alex held on as the creature thrashed and died. Section 7, target down, he reported, moving to next. Position. Throughout the city, similar scenes were playing out. Human soldiers were killing Zephyrian warriors using traps, ambushes, and guerrilla tactics. The aliens were stronger and faster, but the humans were smarter and more desperate. Commander Nina Davis piloted her ship. The mongoose through the debris field where a Zephyrian fleet had been destroyed. Her vessel was small and fast, designed specifically to hunt bioships. Its hull was coated with substances that made it appear dead to Zephyrian sensors. Target acquired, reported her gunner. Large bioship, approximately 2 kilometers in length. Nina studied the enemy vessel. It was beautiful in a horrifying way. Its organic curves and pulsing lights making it look like a deep-sea creature swimming through space. Load the special. Warheads, she ordered. The mongoose carried weapons that would have been considered war crimes against any human enemy. Viral bombs that caused living tissue to dissolve. Sonic weapons that drove bioships insane. Genetic weapons that turned the aliens' own biology against them. Firing, the gunner announced. The missiles struck the Zephyrian ship and began their work. The bioship's hull started changing color as the viral agents spread through its systems. The creature that was the ship began to convulse as human-made. Diseases attacked its nervous system. Within minutes, the massive vessel was dead, its corpse drifting in space like a beached whale. Another one down, Nina reported, moving to next target. The war had been raging for 8 months now, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Both species were fighting for complete extinction of the other. There were no prisoners taken, no mercy shown, no negotiations attempted, but the war was changing both sides. The Zephyrians had been forced to adapt their tactics for the first time in thousands of years. They had created new types of warriors, new weapons, new strategies. The species that had grown complacent from endless victories was learning to fight again. Humanity was changing too, but in ways that horrified the few alien observers who watched. From a safe distance, human soldiers were being modified with alien technology captured from the battlefield. Children were being trained as warriors from the age of 5. Entire planets were being converted into weapon factories. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in a captured Zephyrian facility, studying the most important discovery of the war. The complex was a breeding center where the aliens created their warriors, and what she had found here would change everything. Captain Miller, she called to Dan, who had somehow survived the radiation from their first battle. You need to see this. She led him to a laboratory where hundreds of Zephyrian embryos were growing in artificial wombs. But these were not the warriors they had been fighting. These are what Zephyrians really look like, Sarah explained. Small, weak, almost helpless. The warriors we've been fighting are genetically modified versions of their species. Dan stared at the embryos. They were no bigger than human children with soft skin and gentle features. They looked nothing like the terrifying killers that had been attacking human colonies. You mean their entire military is artificially created? Yes, and that gives us a terrible opportunity.
Oh.
Sarah brought up data on her scanner. If we can target their breeding facilities, we can cripple their ability to make new warriors. If we can corrupt their genetic databases, we can turn their own biology against them. Dan understood immediately. We can attack their children. We can do worse than that, Sarah said quietly. We can make sure they can't have children. We can make their species extinct. The idea should have horrified them. They were talking about genocide on a scale never seen in galactic history. After 8 months of watching Zephyrian warriors kill human families, neither of them felt any mercy. Do it, Dan said. Across human space, the war was turning. What had started as a desperate defense was becoming a vicious counterattack. Human fleets were striking deep into Zephyrian territory, carrying weapons designed not just to kill warriors, but to destroy the species' ability to continue existing. The galaxy watched in terror as two apex predator species tore each other apart. Some aliens began to realize that whoever won this war would be the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever known. And in the depths of space, human ships carrying the most terrible weapons ever created began their journey toward the Zephyrian homeworld. President John Carter stood on the bridge of a captured Zephyrian command ship, looking out at the alien homeworld below. The planet was beautiful, with silver cities that spiraled up from purple oceans. For 50,000 years, this world had been the center of an empire that conquered everything it touched. Today, it belonged to humanity. The final battle had lasted 18 hours. Admiral Grace Taylor's fleet had arrived at the Zephyrian homeworld carrying weapons that no species had ever used before. Viral bombs that targeted specific DNA sequences. Genetic weapons that sterilized entire populations. Chemical agents that turned the aliens' own biology against them. The Zephyrians had fought desperately to defend their home. Their bioships had evolved during the war, becoming larger and more dangerous than ever before. Their warriors had been modified with new weapons and armor. But it was not enough. Captain Ellen Wright had led the final assault on the planetary defense stations. Her ship, the UES Vengeance, had crashed through the alien shields using a tactic that would have been impossible for any other species. She had loaded her ship with human volunteers who knew they would die, then used the ship itself as a giant missile. The explosion had torn a hole in the planet's defenses large enough for the human fleet to pour through. Within hours, human forces were landing on the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld. "Mr. President," said Dr. Paul Green, humanity's new diplomatic specialist, "the Zephyrian High Command is requesting a meeting." Carter turned away from the window. In the past year, he had aged 10 years. The stress of leading humanity through its first interstellar war had changed him from a politician into something harder and more ruthless. "Do they want to surrender?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Complete and unconditional surrender. They're offering to submit to human authority." Carter almost smiled. A year ago, the Zephyrians had come to exterminate humanity. They had expected to find weak prey waiting to be slaughtered. Instead, they had found predators that were even more dangerous than themselves. "Tell them I'll meet with them in 1 hour. But the meeting happens on our terms, in our location, with our rules." Out. An hour later, Carter sat in the command center of the captured Zephyrian fortress. Round him were the surviving leaders of humanity's war effort. Admiral Taylor, who had lost 2 sons in the fighting. General Hayes, whose right arm had been replaced with cybernetic parts after his Zephyrian attack. Dr. Turner, who had developed the weapons that finally broke the alien empire, the Zephyrian delegation entered the room under heavy guard. They looked nothing like the proud warriors who had declared war on humanity. These aliens were broken, defeated, and afraid. Their leader was Elder Kethvon, the same alien who had started this war with his accusations in the Galactic Confederation. He was thin and pale, and his eyes no longer glowed with confidence. "President Carter," he said through a translator, "I come to offer the surrender of the Zephyrian hegemony." Carter looked at the alien who had condemned his species to death. "Surrender? That's interesting. A year ago, you told us that the ritual of ending silence could not be taken back. You said this war would continue until one of our species was extinct." Elder Kethvin lowered his head. "We were wrong. Underestimated your species. We thought you were like the other races we had conquered. We did not understand what you truly were." "And what are we?" Carter asked. The alien was quiet. For a long moment, when he spoke, his voice was filled with something that sounded like fear. "You are death singers," he said. "You are the song that ends worlds. You're what we were before we became civilized. You're what we forgot how to be." Carter stood up and walked around the table to face the alien directly. "You called us primitive. You said we were young and weak. You came to our worlds to kill our children." "Yes," the alien whispered. "You destroyed 23 species completely. You enslaved 67 others. You ruled the galaxy through fear for 50,000 years." "Yes." Carter leaned close to the alien. "And now you want mercy?" Elder Kethben looked up with desperate eyes. "Your species has proven its strength. You have one. We submit to your authority. Please do not do to us what we did to others." Carter straightened up and looked around the room. His advisors were watching him carefully. This moment would decide not just the fate of the Zephyrians, but humanity's place in the galaxy. "You're right about one thing," Carter said finally. "We are death singers. We are the melody that stops hearts. But we only sing for those who threaten our children." He walked back to his chair and sat down. "Here are our terms. The Zephyrian hegemony will be dissolved. Your military will be disbanded. Your weapons will be destroyed. Your conquered territories will be freed." The alien nodded quickly. "We accept." "I'm not finished," Carter continued. "Your species will serve as vassals to humanity. You will provide us with your technology, your knowledge, and your resources. In return, we will allow you to continue existing, and if we refuse, Carter's." The voice became cold. "Then we finish what you started. We complete the extinction you promised each other." The alien was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "We accept your terms." Dr. Green brought forward the surrender documents. As elder, Kethbon signed them with a shaking hand. Carter felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Humanity had survived, but they had become something terrible in the process. 6 months later, Carter stood before the reformed Galactic Confederation Council. The same chamber where humanity had been expelled was now filled with aliens who looked at humans with a mixture of respect and fear. The crystal beings who had tried to mediate the original conflict spoke first. The Galactic Confederation formally recognizes humanity as a member species and acknowledges human authority over former Zephyrian territories. Carter nodded. "Humanity accepts membership in the Confederation. But we want to make something clear. To everyone here," he looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many alien species as possible. "A year ago, you expelled us from this organization. You abandoned us to face extinction alone. You chose to protect yourselves rather than stand up to bullies." The chamber was completely silent. "We remember this," Carter continued. "We remember who our friends were when we needed them most. We remember who turned their backs on us. Ambassador Vera Collins, who had started this entire crisis with her innocent mistake, stepped forward. Humanity came to you in peace. Seeking friendship, you gave us war instead. Now you know what we're truly capable of." She looked directly at the spot where Elder Kethvon had once stood. "I suggest you choose your next words very carefully." The session ended with humanity taking their place as senior members of the Confederation. Other species approached Earth with trade offers, military alliances, and requests for protection. Later that evening, Carter stood in his quarters aboard the flagship, looking out at the stars. Admiral Taylor joined him at the window. "Think we did the right thing?" she asked. Carter was quiet for a moment. "We survived. Our children will grow up free. Our species will continue to exist. Whatever we had to become to achieve that, it was worth it."
And the Zephyrians? They'll learn to live as our vassals, or they won't live at all. Their choice. Taylor nodded.
"The galaxy certainly sees us differently now." Carter smiled grimly. "Good. Let them fear us. Let them remember what happens when someone threatens humanity. We may have come to the stars seeking peace, but we've shown them we're prepared for war. Outside the ship, human vessels patrolled space that had once belonged to the galaxy's most feared empire. The age of Zephyrian dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun, and across the galaxy. No species would ever again make the mistake of underestimating the Death Singers from Earth.